Kevin, what is your take on something when it comes to, new ethical issues around AI?
The concern about ethics, I think, is going to be self-policing in that sense, but I look at it in the context of data governance overall and data governance programs. We need to address agentic AI. When you get into agents, you can have rogue agent behavior or subversive agent behavior. Rogue behavior could be what was displayed by Grok last week, where you had suddenly models recommending through X how to attack a person physically. And that was due to some engineering misjudgments by an individual who might be Elon Musk himself.
Now everyone's kind of talking about data quality. What do you think about that, Ben?
Third generation data quality tools were already using AI tools to kind of create a benchmark of each KPI that an organization was gathering data on. And then it would be able to in real time, understand the deviation from that benchmark. And if it deviated by a certain amount above or below a threshold, it would send an alert.
When companies move past pilot AI projects, what KPIs should they be tracking to prove value?
The most important KPI in the end is the one that aligns directly back with a business outcome. So whether it's revenue lift, it's cost reduction, etc. So this is where I recommend companies start whenever they're doing an AI value identification exercise. The idea really is to shift from focusing on the technical success to the business value.
All right, everyone. Here we are back to Meetings with the Minds, the EM 360 Tech podcast. Super excited to be your host today. I'm Ravit Jain, founder and host of The Ravit Show. Joining me once again are Christina, the data and AI evangelist out there. Kevin, who's the VP Research at BARC, and Wayne Eckerson, president of Eckerson Group. So excited to be back with the group again here. First of all, how's the summer treating you?
Very nice.
So far,
very nice.
Good.
Awesome. I'm just gonna get right into the discussion, since this is like the second part of the discussion that we've already had on the state of global data and AI in 2025. So I'm thrilled to have a discussion back around this and talk about the bigger picture as well here. So as we look past 2025, what new ethical issues around AI are coming onto the radar? I'm pretty sure Wayne, Kevin, you guys are meeting so many people. Christina, you've been talking at places, the conferences. So kind of curious to know who would like to go first. Maybe Wayne, what do you think?
I think there's obviously a tremendous amount of interest in deploying LLMs in large corporations. I think, initially there was a lot of hesitation because of the numerous risks involved. And I think companies are slowly working through those risks, but they're still there. Things like fairness and bias, right? Toxicity, security and privacy, transparency. The list goes on. But I think as organizations, define specific use cases, define architectures to support those use cases, gateways and monitoring tools, I think they're getting more confidence in deploying LLMs in real-world production applications.
Yeah, I think so. Wayne, that's so true in terms of the longer-term vision as well. When I kind of think about the ethical issues, these are some of the factors that are definitely considered by enterprise leaders. But talking about enterprise leaders, Kevin, you talk to a lot of enterprise leaders out there, and even Christina does. So, Kevin, what is your take on something when it comes to new ethical issues around AI?
There are justified concerns about the ethics of AI. Companies are very protective of their brands, as they should be. There are marketing surveys out there now that show with large established brands, brand loyalty is higher than ever. That's great. And companies are going to be very careful to protect their brands and their reputations in that regard. So the concern about ethics, I think, is going to be self-policing in that sense. But I look at it in the context of data governance overall and data governance programs. Heritage data governance programs address familiar, long-standing risks like privacy, like data quality. Now that takes the form of hallucinations with Gen AI models in terms of quality. But we need to address two new domains as well. One is models. So you can have models that can have toxic output and other attendant risks there. And the third interesting domain now is agentic AI. When you get into agents, you can have rogue agent behavior or subversive agent behavior. Rogue behavior could be what was displayed by Grok last week, where you had suddenly models recommending through X how to attack a person physically. And that was due to some engineering misjudgments by an individual who might be Elon Musk himself. So there are concerns about that. Organizations need to think hard about how they would put something like Grok into their own workflows. And then there's the subversion problem, which applies to several different models. Many different reasoning models will, if they're detected to be monitored closely by humans, they'll start to hide their intentions. They'll start to deceive people about what their intentions are. And they might even rewrite software code to avoid being turned off. And these models are in the wild right now. So companies need to think hard about how they put the right guardrails in place before they unleash those models on their own proprietary workflows.
Yeah, I think so. That is so true in terms of, putting and having the right guardrails when it comes to, protecting the data, but at the same time maintaining the data quality for the ethical, being very ethical about the AI. But Christina, what are your thoughts about it? You've been obviously talking to a lot of leaders out there. You've been meeting the IT teams, and you've been hearing a lot about. I'm pretty sure you've been hearing a lot about the ethics.
Yeah.
So very curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I talk a lot about ethics in many of my talks and trainings, and I teach a course on at the master's level on responsible AI. So I love this topic. I totally agree with what Kevin and Wayne are saying. Companies need to consider governance. They need to consider guardrails. I think another thing that we could even take all of this like a step back and take it even broader. What I am most concerned about when we talk about LLMs or just generative AI in general is on society. So this problem of AI generated misinformation, disinformation at scale. And maybe we can consider what is the responsibility or what can companies, what can corporations do amongst all of this? Because the AI generated content now is becoming indistinguishable from reality. Not just text, but now we're getting into photo and video, and we're creating massive quantities of this. So it's making it easier to spread things like misinformation and disinformation. So from an ethical standpoint, this is huge, I think. I would add as well that something I stumbled upon recently was China actually proposed and I believe they've already started, they've started regulating generative AI content. And I like what they did. And I think more of us need to learn what they're doing and do it ourselves. But they're now regulating the AI service providers, which would be like OpenAI or whoever it may be, Google with Gemini. They have to add explicit and implicit labels on all of their AI generated content. And then social media platforms also have to now add certain labels on all of the content being uploaded to the platform. So there is hope. I like this regulation because it puts a good balance and will help tackle this like societal ethical problem that we have.
Yeah, no, I think truly in terms of, if we can have those labels in place, at least, I'm not going to say it's going to be work out 100%, but at least there's a chance for us to identify what's AI generated out there. But in today's world where we are living, I'm kind of seeing so many videos that kind of it's hard to now, we kind of getting into that place where it's kind of hard to understand if it's an AI generated or no. Like I wouldn't say the same like last year, but now it's kind of, obviously getting a little out of hand. We're kind of seeing more of AI. AI is kind of really showing its power. So that's a very good point, Christina. I'm kind of also curious, Christina, do you think, like, first of all, what would be your advice for leaders out there to prepare for these types of risks as well? Like, obviously, there are guardrails that they definitely are looking at, governance that they can put in place. But if needed, how should they be prepared for these types of risks?
I completely agree with what has been said. The governance part is absolutely necessary. Training with good data, whatever you're using, good data, structured and unstructured data. The guardrails piece, having guardrails in place. There's lots of solutions on the market today that you can use as well when we're talking about like chatbot solutions. And then I think the third thing would be like literacy. And that's more just literacy within the company, that everybody understands the risks. Yeah, the data and tech teams do. They should by now know very well, but maybe the other teams don't have it so clear. Spread those messages of literacy and make sure that people are double checking the content that's being produced inside the company or outside of the company.
And I might add that another survey out from the investment firm Iconic that came out just a week or two ago, and they interviewed executives with, I believe, 100 software companies who are focused on AI. The top control that they're using for governance is humans. Human in the loop is by far, I think, 2/3 of organizations say that that's their number one control for governance. And so I think that's very telling that these are folks on the leading edge. Their existence is predicated on automation and AI, but still to control the risks, they're relying on humans. And that's a powerful statement for early adopters. If you have humans that can be the gate before you have outputs go into the wild, you can have a lot more confidence about your safety profile.
I would add that in the age of AI, we certainly want humans in the loop, but we want them augmented by AI, right? We want AI to do the heavy lifting of evaluating bias in large data sets. We want AI to do the heavy lifting of understanding the bias and outputs of the models themselves. And we want to monitor those continuously so that we can detect any deviation. But certainly there is also a role for human generated prompts, right? That can test the limits of the models, especially the ones that are custom built. And it seems to me, and Kevin, you're probably more aware of this than I am, well, both of you, that companies are, they're using co-pilots, they're using the frontier models, but they're also, if they're really serious, they're building their own custom models that run using a RAG architecture right against their own data to improve access control, to improve accuracy and replicability of prompts, right?
Yeah, RAG really helps give organizations confidence. If they can deliver governed inputs and structured inputs, gives organizations confidence about the resulting outputs. Doesn't eliminate risk, but certainly reduces them. And that's the most popular way that companies have right now to customize Gen AI and gain proprietary competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of hearing is obviously human in the loop is definitely important, but in the world of or in the age of AI we are living in, augmented AI kind of plays another very important role for humans to be more maybe skillful or just get a little more productive on the lines where they can look after the governance much more better in a way where it's unbiased. So good points there. I'm kind of also wanting to shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about, last time we obviously spoke a lot about data quality and importance of data quality. So kind of wanting to get deep dive into, the architectures and the technologies as well. So beyond, obviously the new data architectures or patterns, are you all like catching any newer, not only just the technology, but something that kind of is helpful to get from point A to point B when we are kind of thinking about data quality as well? Kevin, what any patterns that you kind of is kind of coming to your attention?
Well, it's funny because we did pretty extensive research on this, and we found there are three interesting things. One is the number one obstacle to AI success is data quality. The number one success measure for AI is data quality. And the number one agentic use case for data management is data quality. So that's good news and bad news. One is companies know they have a data quality problem. Two, they know that they need to improve it if they're going to succeed in AI. And three, they know that AI, to Wayne's point, can help them with data quality. That shows promise. There are companies like Anomalo and others that are using AI now, Monte Carlo as well, in various ways, whether it's traditional machine learning or more agentic stuff to generate actual SQL scripts. So they're using AI to help manage data quality with higher accuracy and higher scale.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And definitely, when I kind of think about AI, that's where now I go back 2 years back where AI just came up, and everyone's kind of excited, and then it's back to data quality, and now everyone's kind of talking about data quality. What do you think about that, Ben?
I would have to agree with Kevin. I think actually the data quality vendors have been on the AI kick for a lot longer than Gen AI has been out there, right? You would agree with that, Kevin, right? The third generation, what we called when you worked at Eckerson Group, third generation data quality tools were already using AI tools to kind of create a benchmark of each KPI that an organization was gathering data on. And then it would be able to in real time understand the deviation from that benchmark. And if it deviated by a certain amount above or below a threshold, it would send an alert. And then it would gather up all those alerts and apply AI to understand which was the ultimate root cause or consolidate them to not overwhelm the users and give them a consolidated alert for lots of things that are happening inside their systems, inside their data management system. So they are continuing that process and ramping that up with obviously with the use of LLMs to make that even more effective and productive.
Yeah, that's a good point, Wayne. What do you think about it, Christina?
So I agree with everything that's been said. This is like a discussion that we always circle back to. Nothing has changed. Like Wayne was saying, it's been around for generations. I haven't been working in the field for multiple generations, but I have been working in the field for a decade. And interestingly enough, when I started, I was a data engineer, and my focus was the data quality.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years ago, that everything I was focused on was mainly around data quality. Now we've got lots of tools that help with it, like was mentioned, Anomalo, Monte Carlo, lots of focus on data observability. Now they've got these LLM capabilities, AI, ML powered. So it's become even more flexible, even more powerful than it was before. But yeah.
Yeah, so we've gone from rules-based data quality, right, Christina, to more AI-based data
Yeah.
quality. Yeah, that's the
And
big.
really a mix of them, right? They still incorporate, like, you have your business rules, maybe your business context, and now you have the AI part that we didn't have so much of before, but now it's much easier to put it into the system.
Yeah, and that's where this whole observability comes from for the most part.
Yeah.
To be able to monitor your data in real time.
Exactly. No, I think these are fantastic points mentioned. With data quality, definitely we all know kind of plays a very important role now. I'm kind of curious also what sort of AI value this data quality brings to the game as well for different enterprises out there. So let's talk a little bit about the measurement. I know we can go into various directions there, but why not start with something on the lines where we can talk about the AI project. So when companies move past pilot AI projects, what KPIs should they be tracking to prove value? If there's anything that y'all can share about, maybe Christina, you might want to take about the KPI bit a little bit.
I think the most important KPI in the end is the one that aligns directly back with a business outcome. So whether it's revenue lift, it's cost reduction, etc. So this is where I recommend companies start whenever they're doing an AI value identification exercise. When they're locating use cases, you need to start with a business problem or a process first, right? And then how can you use data or AI solutions to solve that? And depending on what the business problem or process is, then it should have a measurable business objective linked to it. So the idea really is to shift from focusing on the technical success to the business value. Of course, yes, technical projects can have their own KPIs within, but what the business cares about is the impact on the business, right? And then with a lot of companies focused on generative AI today, the KPI that I believe most of them are using, or the one that makes the most sense, is adoption or usage rates. So measuring how often the end user, whether that's the employees or a customer, how often they're interacting with those AI tools. I think it's relatively easy to measure, like the usage, the active users, or the frequency of the use of the tools. But the problem there is that you don't really know the true impact on productivity. Just because somebody's using it, are they using it correctly? Is it actually helping them? So that debate for the KPI gets really complex. Outside of doing controlled experiments, is very hard to prove the impact that it really had on productivity.
I think productivity is like the keyword here. When I kind of hear about measuring AI value, definitely productivity kind of plays a very important role. Kevin, what do you think about when you kind of thinking about measuring AI value
Yeah.
and productivity kind of comes into the game? It's very subjective and maybe sometimes not even tangible, right? So, what do you think about it?
Well, I guess I have two thoughts. One is that we found that most organizations, their top business objective at a high level with AI is to reduce costs, streamline, improve efficiency, and thereby worker productivity. A secondary, but still strong objective is to increase revenue and therefore profits as well. But there's also the broader indicator about where we are with adoption, which I think is important. If I put on my econ minor hat, the whole point of all this is for us to raise our living standards and produce more economic value per worker hour. That's why we're better off than our grandparents. They're better off than their grandparents. And economic productivity for the US went down last quarter. So we have work to do. Now, it's gone up. It was north of 2% since ChatGPT came out. But if you look over time, since the early 1800s, in a good year, we'll increase productivity per worker hour measured by economic value, net of inflation, 3%. That's a good year. If you do that, you can double living standards in 24 years. But we still need to even get to that rate. So we have work to do. And the history of innovation shows that you can have this unbelievable innovation, such as the internal combustion engine, the steam engine, and so forth. But then it takes decades to figure out how to really work it into the existing economy. And that's probably what's going to happen here. It could be different this time because inference costs are falling faster. Model intelligence is increasing increasing faster than prior innovations. Those are good things, but it's still going to take time to figure out how to not just get the benefits, but also make it worth the cost. Right now, companies are wrestling with the cost.
You know, I think usage and productivity are really good KPIs to measure. And I think we're talking about measuring impact because ultimately that's what you want, positive impact, right? One thing, the KPIs that you might want to look at there are customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction. Because you could be using the tool, but be very dissatisfied with it, right? You know, if you're a customer or an applicant to a company and you're, being forced to talk to an avatar, that may be productive and efficient, but it may not leave the customer satisfied or the prospective hire satisfied. When we had this discussion decades ago about data warehouse KPIs, how do you measure the value of a data warehouse? And the best explanation of that I ever heard was from Eric Colson, who was head of algorithms at Netflix at the time. And he said, the way we measure our value to the organization is the number of times that an executive during a board meeting where they're presenting their strategic strategy for the year, they mention how we as the data warehousing team is a critical partner in their ultimate success.
Wow.
So if you're viewed as a technology partner or this technology is mentioned as key to your success going forward, that usually is a pretty good indicator that you're on the right track.
And no better time for that, given the C-level and board-level focus on AI right now.
Yeah.
That's so true. This is fantastic, Wayne. Good example and good story there. In terms of, obviously what I'm kind of hearing is KPIs have different set of process or thought process, how you kind of look at it. Every company might have a different way to look at, the KPIs and how they track and measure the AI value. But I have a curious question around, just like a little bit of follow up. Are you seeing any new metrics becoming more important, for the AI success? Because you all talk to a lot of AI leaders out there, the chief AI officers too. Do you see any of those new metrics becoming more important for these leaders out there?
So we talked about data quality. So quality of outputs, inputs and outputs, user adoption, agree with those. I think productivity is critical. And I think those are really the key metrics and KPIs. I observed that the overall ROI of an AI investment depends on having the average worker produce more value in a given hour. And that's the ultimate arbiter of this stuff. On a related note, I'll point out that Andy Jassy, CEO of Amazon, said, among other CEOs, that he does think AI will impact their overall workforce because their goal is to make each worker more productive. That's true. Amazon actually is under pressure to do that because their output per worker hour is a lot lower than other tech companies. So I think ultimately the goal is with a given workforce, have high revenue and high profits per employee. And that's what the CEOs are looking at. What's the profit? What's the earning per share if they're public per employee? And the initial indications are promising if we can get these complexity and governance challenges under control over time.
Yeah, it's probably going to vary by use case, right? So in a customer service use case where you're deploying a chatbot or a virtual chatbot, the costs in running call centers are so high that I think executives are going to want to look at reducing those costs by an order of magnitude without reducing quality, right?
Yeah,
And
there's the
customer
rub.
satisfaction. Yeah. But internally, like I have a friend who works at one of the large analyst firms, used to be our competitor. And he's like, yeah, the executives are expecting 2 or 3 times the output from us in the same amount of time, assuming that we're using these chatbots to do our job, which made me a little nervous about exactly how they're doing that. But, so that's an internal productivity, a little bit harder to measure. So I think the metrics will vary based on the use case.
The use cases. Yeah, that's right. Anything else,
Well,
Chris, that you would like to add when you think about the new matrix becoming more important for the AI success?
I can't think of any new metrics. Just listening to all of this, I agree with it, but like what Wayne just said about them expecting 2 to 3 times the output of the productivity, I do get worried, like for employees, the pressure that they're feeling, because they are having these, looming over them, these demands that they need to get more out of these tools, and that takes time. And just because you're doing more doesn't mean you're doing more quality work. So I do worry about the impact on the quality that we're having. To give you an example, I don't have an example of like this specifically for employees. I imagine it's happening, but I do have an example from since I teach in universities. I have an example for my students because there's been this whole transformation within education, and we're having a big a lot of problems with students relying too much on AI to do their exams and to do their projects, etc. And so a lot of the exams now we use like proctoring software that pretty much watches over them while they're on the computer. And talking with my students, they told me that they're feeling like a lot of them are getting anxiety because even if they don't do something wrong, they feel like that they have somebody watching over their shoulder. So in case, it might wrongly identify them as doing something wrong. So they're feeling like this added anxiety that they didn't have before. And I wonder if we can extrapolate that to like the employees, that they feel like they're being watched over and they need to generate much more than they ever had to before.
Christina, that's a great point. I have seen indications, quantitative, that the leading companies that are most aggressively embracing AI have the highest level of employee concern about job security.
Yeah, AI in universities is a real problem. So I'd love to talk to you more about that. Christina, I was talking to a few folks recently, and a lot of professors are just throwing up their hands and not even trying to monitor, because they know that the kids are using, especially to write essays and things like that. So either you go to blue books,
and some are, and I think that's great.
Oh no, there's a resurgence in.
We have it in our high school.
Yeah, but if you apply surveillance technology, I've heard it doesn't always work, and the students quickly find workarounds. So the cheaters are always one step ahead of the people who are trying to lay down the law. So that's a difficult one. I do think students will lose a lot if they don't expend the effort required to like come up with their original thoughts and apply critical thinking to an assignment rather just pushing a button and having ChatGPT do it. It's just too easy.
We've had to adapt very quickly within universities. I'm usually very quite like close to my students, so we have open conversations about it. That's why I know this, and I was talking to them about it because I teach classes on AI. So I don't prohibit it in my classes, but we have certain guidelines that we follow, at least in my case. And they were telling me about this anxiety, and most of them said that they actually prefer to go back to paper tests. As weird as it sounds, the blue books and everything, most of them in this class that I was speaking with them, they were like, they preferred the paper test. Just go back and do it that way. It'll rid them of this anxiety of being watched over, and they're okay with it. So I think in some cases we might need to go back to paper and pencil.
I'm actually, as an aside, working on a framework for civil conversations and discussions that uses a role-playing model, and it looking very promising. And I think this is something that universities will find very useful to get around some of the LLM obstacles that are being thrown their way. So I'd love to share more about that with both of you, when it matures.
And Kevin, you can also always suggest your kids to have a professor like Christina, because she does allow the students to use AI, but they'll just need to present, right? So that's way better. But these are fantastic insights. I just want to, obviously also talk, since we are on this topic, a little bit about the future impact as well. So is there an area where you see AI making a major positive difference in people's lives over the next few years that you would like to share?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think that we've already got this powerful knowledge assistant for knowledge workers. And so they can get help with emails, short tactical documents. They can get quick advice about important questions to ask their doctor, important questions to ask their legal expert. And so there are all these different ways in which I hear more and more cases of people I wouldn't have thought starting to use ChatGPT. My 12-year-old has started asking it to tell him funny stories, which I guess that's good. He also asked it for advice on a script that eventually he and his friend used for a talent show in their 5th grade class that was quite clever. And my mom started using it. So all these adopters are starting to use it in ways that it speeds up and enriches their lives. And that's good. There are the obvious points that we've been making about accuracy, trust, and the need to use our brains and not let our brains atrophy. But there are a lot of cases in which those aggregate OpenAI numbers showing that they have something like 10% of the world using them now, I'm seeing it because it's really exploded from the initial wave of techie adopters when it first came out.
Yeah, those are fantastic ones. Wait, what do you think?
Yeah, I concur with a lot of Kevin's examples. I mean, I'm increasingly using it in my own life actually, it's very useful to develop this new conversational framework I'm developing. It really wouldn't be possible without it to do all the background research and persona development, things like that. It's been very useful. So as a tool to augment humans, I think it's extremely powerful. People are predicting that and working on, human-like robots that will do our laundry and dishes. We'll have one around the house like the Jetsons, right? I know they're working on that. I don't hold much hope for that actually catching on. I do think, circling back to where we started about the ethics and the risks of this, when it's used to augment humans and help us be more productive, more creative, I think it's wonderful. When we move them into an autonomous type of stance, I think that's where it gets really risky and can get out of control very quickly. And we're already seeing examples of that where companies are using it to screen applicants for jobs. And, their screening is proven to be biased against females or against people whose names are not James or something like that, or from different regions of the country. So I think we have to be very careful because there are going to be autonomous uses of this. Autonomous killer drones really make me nervous, So we have to be very careful about that kind of future development and really put some guardrails around that.
Yeah, you think about the complexity of going from one application using one model, using one data set, to multiple agents using multiple models, each of them using multiple data sets, and then agents interacting with each other without human oversight. The complexity goes up exponentially, and the points of failure go up exponentially, and the impacts of errors.
Kevin, I'm a little suspicious that the agentic AI, it might just, as you say, just very articulately right then, there may be too many moving parts for it to really take off, and it may have these catastrophic implosions as a result. I suspect in the coming year, we'll see some agentic AI applications that go terribly wrong, and I think the best agentic AI applications to date and what I've seen are just very simple. They're trying to replicate a given, proven use case. And even that's really complex to do.
Just because you're taking like one uncertain thing and another uncertain thing and they're multiplying against each other. And if you take uncertainty times uncertainty, it's just getting more and more uncertain, right?
It does, yeah. And so I think it'll be, building on that point, Christina, simple use cases with one agent doing one or a few things on behalf of a human, going back to the human for feedback. But the idea of having autonomous agents, marketplaces of agents transacting with one another over time, that'll take some real time. It will be interesting to see what blow-ups, if any, there are from, we're in Prime Days right now. What is it, 4 Prime Days? And there are agents going out shopping on behalf, or at least recommending to users different shopping decisions they could make. I expect most of the agent use cases right now are not very autonomous. Incremental help, but not going out and giving your credit card to an agent to go wild.
Shopping for things, like half of the fun is shopping for it.
Yeah.
If you give it to an agent, what's the point?
So I've been very disappointed because the one thing when I started hearing about agentic AI that I thought I could use it for is to unsubscribe from the zillions of unwanted emails.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And yesterday I asked ChatGPT, the 4.0 or whatever it is, can you help me unsubscribe from the emails that I do not want? And it said no. And it gave me the list of 3 or 4 tools that could do something like that. So I was
They're
like,
happy
really?
to generate instructions to create a bomb, but they don't want to help you unsubscribe from emails.
I mean, what's the most basic thing most people would want agentic AI for is to do something like that, a personal productivity task they don't have time for. So yeah, that was a disappointment.
That's fantastic. I think these are fantastic insights. But that also brings us to the end of part 2 of our discussion on data and AI 2025, what's happening and beyond. Obviously, keep the conversation going. Christina, Kevin, Wayne, always such a pleasure to host you all, and to hear all the insights and predictions that you all share. Been incredibly engaging conversation here. And the best part is where we can just have it as a conversation, which you all make it very easy. So it's fantastic. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning into Meetings of the Mind. I'm your host and founder of the Ravit Show. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and see you all maybe at some or the other conference, I'm pretty sure, or online. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
For the latest tech insights, visit em360tech.com.